If you're ready to wonk out, here it is. So the Colorado Constitution has this little amendment in it, or part of the Constitution, called the Blaine Amendment, which says no public money will go to private religious schools. This has been a big issue in the 38 states, has similar language. Rob Natelson from our Center on Constitution Studies has been on top of this. Now, you've been studying this, and tell me real briefly again, Blaine Amendment is fill in the blank.
Okay. First, it's named after James G. Blaine, who was a 19th century political figure. I think he got kind of a bad rap. What Blaine did is he proposed an amendment to prevent public funds from going to church or denominational schools. However, in Colorado and in many states, that was expanded to include sectarian schools. The result was a sweeping prohibition far beyond what Blaine himself proposed.
And this became an issue because in Douglas County School District, they put together a scholarship program which went to those schools. The Colorado Supreme Court said you can't do it because of this language in the state constitution. It looked like it was going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and we'd get a decision on this which could have affected 38 states. But since the revolt happened in Douglas County, they pulled back the program, so it's no longer an issue. It's moot. But you've been doing some study on the original language. And this is your area of specialty, and you go back and look at historic documents to find out what the original authors meant. What does the word sectarian mean? Because from what I hear it as, when I hear sectarian, it means secular, which means non-religious. So it's pretty clear to me a ban that sectarian means non-religious schools.
It's probably a good thing that whole case was dismissed in some ways, because the Colorado Supreme Court that interpreted the word sectarian, when they did that, they were way off the mark. The Colorado Supreme Court said sectarian simply means religious, so you can't give money to a religious school. In fact, that's not what sectarian meant at the time it was put in the Colorado Constitution at all.
The Blaine language says you can't give money to a sectarian school or a non-sectarian school?
A denominational school or a school controlled by a church or a sectarian school. And sectarian is the big word here, because it did not mean at the time it was stuck in our Constitution merely religious. It was an insult. It was a word of opprobrium designed to tar or brand certain unpopular religions.
Listen, egghead. So you just took a term I'm not familiar with, sectarian, or now I'm screwed up, and then you called it aborian?
Opprobrium.
Opprobrium.
Really bad.
Just say really bad. Talk down to me.
So, so basically, when they put in the Constitution that no aid could go to sectarian schools, what they were saying is no aid can go to schools that we don't like, whose religion we don't like.
How do you know that?
Well, because there's a ton of evidence to that effect. I looked at 10 different 19th century dictionaries, and they all have definitions that...
You're talking about legal dictionaries?
No,
regular dictionaries.
Regular dictionaries. They all have definitions that connect the word sectarian with words like bigot and heretic, minority or schismatic religions. I looked at newspapers. There are databases out there with hundreds of newspapers. And they ran articles which said things like, be a good Christian, don't be a sectarian. Or Lutherans and Methodists and Presbyterians are not sectarians, but Catholics, Muslims, and Jews and Mormons are, you see?
So does it basically mean whatever religion is out of favor? Whichever one is the minority religion, that's sectarian because it's out of step with the norm.
It basically means religious extremist. You will find articles which do not call Islam sectarian when they're talking about an Islamic country where most of the people are Muslim, right? But in the United States, they considered Islam as a sectarian religion. And so while a Christian school that wasn't affiliated with a denomination could get government funds under these constitutional provisions, a school run by, say, Jews or Roman Catholics could not.
All right, so in the Colorado Constitution, it says, under what we call the Blaine section of it, the state will not give money, school districts will not give money to religious and sectarian schools?
No, it doesn't say religious.
It says...
It doesn't say religious, you see. It basically says that money cannot go to schools that are controlled by churches, think, for example, the Catholic Church,
Right.
or to sectarian schools. So let's say, for example, you have a school like Colorado Christian University. It's not affiliated with a church. That could receive government money under the original meaning of these clauses, unless the people in power decided it was sectarian, in which case it could not. It was a way of squeezing religious minorities, unpopular religions, out of the benefits that were available to most people, which for the most part meant mainline Protestants. I'll give you one other example. In the public schools were overtly religious in many ways. In 1927, in Colorado public schools, it was a regular routine to read the King James Version of the Bible to the kids before class, obviously religious. Somebody complained about this and sued, and it eventually went up to the Colorado Supreme Court. And the Colorado Supreme Court said, yeah, the King James Version is religious, but it's not sectarian. But it's not sectarian. And religious and sectarian are not the same. And yeah, they can go ahead and read the King James Version.
Because most of us use that version.
It's not sectarian. Everybody accepts the Bible is not sectarian.
Right. Only a minute left here. Let me ask you this question. You deal with this all the time,
Yeah.
that we read something in law that when it was written 250 years ago, let's take the Constitution or the Declaration, the words, do they change their meaning?
Words do change their meaning, but the Supreme Court has said that the meaning at the time a Constitution or an amendment is ratified remains the meaning throughout. So the word sectarian in the Colorado Constitution is a permanent invitation to bigotry. I believe it's unconstitutional under the First Amendment and under the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution, unconstitutional on its face. It's like saying, John, everybody will have free speech except for extremists.
Well,
obviously, that would
trust me,
violate the First Amendment.
we extremists understand that.
Right.
Thank you. Hey, listen for me on KHOW Radio. Read me in the Denver Post. Check out the Independence Institute. Just go to independenceinstitute.org. Sign up for our newsletter. Find out what we're doing. We'll see you next week.